The Deep Space Listening Station, floating far beyond the orbit of Pluto, was not supposed to pick up anything unusual. It had been decades since the galaxy had gone quiet. No wars, no trade disputes, no strange signals. The station's job was routine, watch the stars, monitor frequencies, and make sure nothing unexpected entered human space. But on that cold, silent morning in the void, a faint signal began to whisper through the static. At first, it was nothing, just a flicker of noise, buried under cosmic background radiation. The operator on duty, Lieutenant Morgan Hale, almost ignored it. Then, the noise repeated. Not once, not twice, but 3 times. Morgan leaned closer, adjusting the filters. The pattern was deliberate. The static cleared for a heartbeat, and a voice, cold, metallic, and laced with something unsettling, broke through. It spoke in a language no human had ever recorded before. But embedded in its strange rhythm was something recognizable. The universal distress code used by every known spacefaring species. It wasn't just a distress signal. It was a warning. Morgan's heart thudded as the translation AI struggled to decode it. Slowly the words appeared on his screen. We tried to resist. We failed. They are coming. You must prepare. The signal cut off so sharply that Morgan thought the system had failed. But the equipment was fine. The voice was simply gone, no echo, no repeat. It was as if the message itself had been erased from reality. The transmission's origin shocked him. It came from the remains of the Varelian star cluster, a place no human had dared to enter for over a century. The Varelians were one of the most advanced and feared species in the galaxy. They had ruled with pride, power, and arrogance. And then one day, they vanished. No bodies, no ruins, no war records. Just gone. Morgan reported it to command, expecting an immediate response. But instead, his message was flagged classified, rooted to Earth's highest security council. And he was ordered to delete every trace from the station's system. But Morgan had seen enough. Tree files to recognize something. The Varelians had been the last species bold enough to openly challenge humanity. No one knew what happened to them. Some whispered they were destroyed. Others claimed they had fled beyond the galactic rim. But now, a chilling possibility arose. They had been erased. 3 days later, the skies over Earth darkened, not from weather, but from a strange, shimmering light that seemed to ripple through the atmosphere. Communications with several outer colonies went silent. Deep space probes began disappearing one by one. The old veterans, the few surviving admirals and soldiers from the human expansion wars, recognized the signs. As something was moving, something large. And it was coming from the same dark region of space where the Varelians had been wiped away. The Security Council met in secret. Far below the surface of Earth in a bunker older than most cities, only a handful of people in the galaxy had the clearance to even know the meeting existed. Among them was Admiral Sarah Kalin, a war hero who had been retired for 30 years. She looked at the decrypted fragments of the message with a cold, steady gaze. "It's not a warning," she said finally, her voice low. "It's a death notice, and it's already late." Nobody in the room spoke for a long time. The air was heavy. This wasn't just another alien threat. This was something that could wipe entire species from memory. If the Varelians had fallen, humanity could be next. The council voted quietly, reluctantly, to activate Protocol Ashfall, a plan so dangerous and so final that even during the bloodiest wars, it had never been used. It meant one thing: humanity would not run, negotiate, or surrender. They would strike first, with everything they had, before the enemy reached them. But Morgan, still at his post far beyond Pluto, saw something that made his stomach turn. As the distant stars shifted on his monitor, a dark shape blotted out an entire section of the sky. It wasn't a fleet. It wasn't a planet. It was bigger, colder, and older than anything humans had ever encountered. It moved without lights, without signals, without the faintest whisper of an engine. Yet it was coming closer. And as Morgan stared, another transmission came through, not in the alien voice, but in clear, perfect English. "Humanity, your turn has come." The signal cut again. For the first time in decades, the galaxy would remember what humans were capable of when truly provoked. The silence after that message was heavier than any explosion. In the cold emptiness of space, sound didn't carry, but fear did. Across every secret military outpost, every intelligence channel, every deep space defense platform, one question pulsed like a heartbeat. "What is coming?" "On Earth, Admiral." Sarah Kalin stood before a massive holographic display of the galaxy. Her face was calm, but her mind was racing. She had seen enemies before. She had faced fleets that blotted out the stars. But this was different. The readings from the Pluto listening station showed an object so vast, so perfectly silent, that it defied all known physics. No heat signature, no energy trails. It was like a shadow that swallowed light itself. The Security Council had ordered Protocol Ashfall into effect. Massive orbital shipyards came alive, building warships in silence. Weapons that had been locked away for a century. Weapons designed to end civilizations were brought out of vaults deep beneath the lunar surface. Special forces were recalled from peaceful assignments. Colonies on the far edge of human territory received encrypted orders. Prepare for evacuation. But Admiral Kalin knew the truth. He wouldn't have time for evacuations. In the listening station beyond Pluto, Lieutenant Morgan Hale hadn't slept in 2 days. His eyes were fixed on the dark shape creeping closer. He had run every scan possible, but the readings made no sense. The object wasn't approaching at normal speeds. It seemed to shift in ways his instruments couldn't measure, appearing in one place, and then, moments later, somewhere much closer, without crossing the space between. It was like reality itself bent to let it pass. The strangest part was the silence. In space warfare, fleets always made noise, transmissions, sensor pings, encrypted chatter. But this thing didn't even disturb the fabric of space-time the way ships normally did. The only reason they knew it was there at all was because stars disappeared when it moved. Then, the second transmission came. Not a warning, not a demand. Just a statement that froze every commander in the room. "Do not resist. You will be unmade." The words were delivered without emotion, without hate, without mercy. It's just inevitable. Kalin ordered the message archived and sealed from public knowledge. Humanity had survived threats before because they were stubborn, unpredictable, and willing to go further than anyone else. But fear was a weapon too, and she would not let the population panic before the first shot was even fired. In the shadows of Earth's orbit, the first of the Ashfall dreadnoughts was completed. It was the largest warship humanity had ever built, more a mobile fortress than a vessel. Its black hull was layered with ablative armor, quantum disruptor shields, and the new Gravlance weapon, designed to tear apart matter at a subatomic level. But even as the crews cheered its launch, Kalin knew it might not be enough. The classified war archives told a different story about the Varelians' disappearance. Officially, their empire collapsed from internal war. But the real records, sealed for over 100 years, suggested something else, that an ancient enemy, one with no name in any human tongue, had erased them in less than a month. Morgan, still watching from the edge of the system, noticed something no one else had. The dark shape wasn't alone anymore. Smaller shadows had begun to appear at its flanks, hundreds of them, fanning out in perfect formation. They didn't drift randomly. They moved with the precision of a hunting pack. And then, without warning, every human deep space sensor from Neptune to Mars went blind. Not damaged, not jammed, just gone.
Ow.
The screens showed static. Every radar sweep returned the same signal. Empty. The galaxy itself seemed to hold its breath. Kellen's voice was steady when she gave the order. "Initiate first contact protocol, Delta." Every officer in the command room froze. Delta was not a greeting. It was the signal to engage preemptive strike measures. The dreadnoughts would move out, targeting the enemy before they reached Earth's orbit. But deep inside, Even she wondered if they were already too late. The shadows and the void kept coming. The war began without ceremony, without a declaration, without even a warning shot, from the dark side of Jupiter's largest moon. Ashfall 1 emerged, its engines flaring like miniature suns. Behind it, 3 smaller cruisers followed in tight formation. Their orders were clear. Engage the largest shadow first. You disrupt its movement and open a corridor for the rest of the fleet to follow. No one knew what the enemy's weapons looked like, or even if they used weapons at all. But the plan was simple. Hit hard, hit fast. Keep hitting until something broke. Admiral Kalon stood at the center of the Dreadnought's bridge, her eyes fixed on the tactical display. The enemy's readings were still erratic, almost as if the sensors couldn't agree on where it actually was. At one moment it seemed thousands of kilometers away, and the next, it appeared almost within striking distance. Science officers kept whispering theories, dimensional phase shifting, reality skipping, advanced cloaking, but Kalon ignored them. She knew speculation wouldn't save them. Target lock acquired. The weapons officer said at last, his voice tight with tension. Firing Gravlance. The deck shuddered as the main weapon released its shot, a beam of compressed gravitational force that twisted space like a whirlpool. The lance hit the shadow dead center, or at least where the computers calculated its core would be. For a fraction of a second, the target flared in a strange pale glow, like moonlight caught in water. And then nothing. No explosion, no damage readings, not even an energy fluctuation. Confirm hit, Kalon demanded. Confirmed. Da. But the weapons officer's voice faltered. No effect, Admiral. Before anyone could process that, the shadow moved. It didn't accelerate. It didn't turn. It simply appeared much closer, filling the forward view with a darkness so deep it seemed to eat the light from the bridge displays. The smaller flanking shadows broke formation and began to circle the human ships. They moved without engines. Without heat, like they were alive, but not truly alive. A low, unnatural vibration rolled through the dreadnought, so deep it could be felt in the bones rather than heard. Crew members clutched their heads as if it were burrowing into their minds. Kellen's vision blurred for a second, and in that second, she saw something. A memory that wasn't hers. Planets stripped bare, cities turned to dust, skies boiling under alien suns. And then it was gone, leaving only the echo of fear. Shields are dropping, a voice shouted from the rear consoles. No weapon impact. Something's draining them. Morgan Hale, still stationed at the Pluto listening post, was listening to the live feed with growing dread. The battle was barely 5 minutes old, and already every reading screamed that humanity was outmatched. He slammed his hand on the COM switch, sending an urgent message to Kalon. Admiral, the smaller shadows. They're not ships. They're feeding on energy. On us. On the Dreadnought's bridge, Kellen's jaw tightened. Which? Non-essential systems? To cold mode? Starve them. Lights dimmed across the ship as unnecessary power systems shut down. The enemy shadows slowed for a moment, as if confused. It bought them seconds, and Kalon knew seconds could mean survival. Fire. On the flanking targets with rail cannons, concentrated spread. The cannons roared, sending hypervelocity slugs through the void. This time, one of the smaller shadows reacted, twisting unnaturally to avoid the shot. But the second and third impacts struck true. Instead of breaking apart like ships, the shadow rippled and dissolved, collapsing inward until it vanished completely. A cheer went up on the bridge too soon. The destroyed shadow didn't die. It reformed behind them, whole again like nothing had happened. Worse, it was closer now, and it latched onto the Dreadnought's hull. A sharp metallic groan echoed through the decks. Crew members screamed as frost began spreading across the walls. Whatever this thing was, it wasn't just feeding on energy anymore. It was freezing the ship's systems from the inside. Kellen's hand slammed down on the emergency channel. All ships fall back to Mars' defense line. Now, retreat was no escape. The large shadow followed, closing the distance without moving in any way that made sense. At times it seemed to stretch across space, other times it compressed, becoming a needle of darkness stabbing toward them. Morgan's instruments picked up something horrifying. The shadow wasn't just moving through space, it was moving through time. Its readings would appear in past sensor logs, as if it had always been there. He tried to warn them, but the com signal fractured, breaking into static and whispers that were almost words. On board Ashfall 1, the forward view lit up with a strange burst of white light. For the first time, the shadow reacted violently, twisting away. It wasn't a human attack, it was something else. Somewhere far beyond the battlefield, a signal was being sent. Kaylin recognized the tone instantly. She had heard it once before. In the archives was the same frequency recorded in the final transmissions of the Varelian Empire before they vanished. Someone, or something, else had noticed the battle, and now they were answering. The ship Aurora's Edge drifted silently into the shadow of the dead star, its engines humming low as if afraid to disturb whatever slept here. No light came from the massive black sphere in front of them, only the faint glow of ion trails. Left by passing ships long ago, now to most, this place was a graveyard. But for Captain Rena Hale, it was the place where truth had been buried. Her crew watched in tense silence. The way soldiers watch a battlefield after the shooting stops, knowing the silence never lasts. On the scanner, the dead stars showed nothing unusual. No signs of energy, no transmissions, no motion. But the Aurora's Edge had intercepted a signal hours ago, a whisper hidden inside ancient radiation. It was an old distress call, encrypted in a pattern so strange, no known species could have made it. Only after their AI broke through did the message appear. Coordinates to this star. And a warning written in human military code from centuries ago. It read, "Do not approach. Do not awaken them. We'll finish what we started." No one spoke after hearing it. Even the youngest officer, Jace, who usually couldn't stay quiet for 10 seconds, stared at the floor. There was something about that last sentence, "We will finish what we started," that didn't sound like a threat to the enemy. It sounded like a promise. As the ship crept closer, a shape began to emerge from the star's shadow. It wasn't a planet or a station. It was something far older. A structure so massive it looked like a piece of the universe itself had been carved into a weapon. The design didn't match any galactic records. Spires twisted around a central core, and between them floated giant rings that rotated without any visible power source. "Magnify," Rena ordered. The image on the screen sharpened. Deep along the structure's outer shell were markings, hundreds of them. But they weren't words. They were names. Human names. A chill spread through the room. No one had told them humans had ever been here before. And yet the markings went. On 4 kilometers, each one etched in steel. "What is this place?" Lieutenant Cora whispered. Rena didn't answer. Her eyes were fixed on something else, the largest ring slowly spinning in silence. It wasn't just a piece of the structure. It was a prison gate. Something inside was moving. The motion was slow, almost lazy, but impossible to ignore. Something massive shifted behind the inner walls. Then, without warning, the ring lit up with a pulse of white light. The Aurora's Edge shuddered. Consoles flickered. Every screen went black. What just happened? Jay shouted. EMP surged. The AI's voice crackled. Source origin unknown. Restoring minimal systems. But Rena already knew the source. That light had come from inside the prison. Something was waking up. Another pulse hit them, this one deeper, like the heartbeat of a star. Then a sound came over the comms, not a voice, but a low, grinding noise that felt alive. It wasn't just sound. It was pressure in their chests, vibrations in their bones. And then words formed, though no mouth had spoken them. "Who dares enter the silence?" The crew froze. It wasn't human. It wasn't any language they'd heard before. But somehow, every one of them understood it. "This is Captain Rena Hale of the Aurora's Edge," she said, her voice steady. "We received a distress call." A pause, then laughter. Cold, humorless, ancient. Yes, the humans sent it. As they did before, as bait. The temperature in the cabin seemed to drop. The entity wasn't confused. It knew exactly what humans were, and it remembered them. "What are you?" Cora asked before she could stop herself. The reply came like a whisper inside their minds. The last, the forgotten, the ones they could not kill, only chain. Rena's breath caught. This wasn't just an old enemy. This was the enemy, the one erased from galactic records, the one no one remembered fighting, and here it was, speaking to them like a ghost at the door. "They left you here," Rena said slowly. "Why?" The voice shifted, becoming sharp. "Because they feared us. But fear fades, chains rust, and now you have opened the way." Suddenly, alarms screamed. The structure's outer walls began to unfold, revealing a dark interior where movement stirred like a nest of serpents. The prison wasn't just unlocking, it was dismantling itself. "Captain, we have to go," Cora shouted. Rena's instincts told her to run, but something inside her wouldn't let her. The distress call had been human. That meant someone had wanted them to come here. Someone had planned this. The entity's voice returned, heavier. "This time, tell your humans. We remember." The rings spun faster. Energy surged through them, growing so bright the dead star itself seemed to awaken. And then Rena saw that a fleet of human warships, not in the present, but burned into the light like a memory. Ships from centuries ago surrounding this very prison, firing until their hulls tore apart. The humans had fought here. They had won. But they hadn't destroyed the enemy. The image faded. The prison's gates cracked open. Something vast and armored began to push through. "Full power to engines," Rena ordered. The Aurora's edge roared to life, surging away from the dead star. Behind them, the structure unfurled like a blooming flower made of steel and shadow. The thing inside was stepping free for the first time in hundreds of years. "Captain," the AI said, "should I send a warning to human command?" Rena looked back at the screen. The entity was now fully outside its prison, taller than any warship, its body covered in shifting metal plates, its eyes burning with cold fire. It turned its head toward them, not in rage but in recognition. "Yes," Rena said. "Tell them their past just woke up." Transmission went out, racing across the galaxy toward human space. Far behind them, in the shadow of the dead star, the last species to challenge humanity opened its wings and began to follow. The war had reached its turning point, but no one in the galaxy knew it yet. Across the stars, fleets were burning, planets were falling silent, and once proud armies were now drifting wrecks in space. The Zereth, the last species foolish enough to challenge the humans, were fighting with desperation that bordered on madness. They had underestimated humanity in the beginning, thinking they could break them, weaken them, erase them from history. But now, the Zereth's own history was burning, their cities reduced to ash, their people scattered like dust in the void. On the bridge of the human flagship Resolute Dawn, Admiral Marcus Hale stood at the command table, his eyes locked on the holographic display. The war map showed red zones where the Zerath still held ground, but those zones were shrinking hour by hour. The Admiral's voice was calm, but every word carried the weight of final judgment. Into the Helion corridor. "I want no survivors." His officers obeyed without question. Humanity had given mercy in the early days of the war. That mercy was gone now. Far away in the deep shadow of a dying star, the Zereth Council held what would be their last meeting. The Grand Hall, once filled with the golden light of their twin suns, now stood under the pale flicker of emergency lamps. The air smelled of smoke and metal, and the floor trembled with distant impacts. High Chancellor Vierex spoke, and a voice cracked with exhaustion. "They do not stop. No matter how many ships we destroy, they come again. No matter how many worlds we burn, they rebuild." Around the table, the council members looked down, avoiding his eyes. They had all heard the intercepted human broadcasts, the chilling promises that this war would end with the Zereth erased from memory. They had laughed when they first heard it. No one was laughing. In the human forward command base on New Titan, Captain Alina Ross was preparing her strike team for what she knew was the most dangerous mission yet. The intelligence was clear. The Zereth had one last stronghold, hidden deep in the asteroid fields of the Narvan Belt. From there, they were sending out what little resistance they could muster. Or worse, there were whispers of a secret weapon. Something that could turn the tide if the Zereth had enough time to finish it. Lena checked her rifle, her armor, and the small pendant around her neck, a reminder of her brother, lost in the first Zereth attack. Her voice was steady, but her team could feel the tension. This ends now, she told them. No matter what we find in there, we finish it. The resolute dawn entered the Narvan belt like a silent predator. Asteroids drifted lazily in. The black, but each one could hide a mine, a turret, or a cloaked Zereth ship. The human fleet moved in perfect formation, their weapon systems locked and ready. Admiral Hale knew the risks. This place was a labyrinth of rock and death, but he also knew his enemy. The Zereth were cornered, and cornered enemies always fought hardest. As the fleet pushed deeper, the first ambush came. From behind the shadows of asteroids, Zeroth ships burst forward, their plasma cannons firing in blinding bursts. The space around the humans lit up with explosions, but the fleet did not falter. Wave after wave of Zeroth ships broke against human shields like water against a wall. Meanwhile, deep within the largest asteroid of the belt, the Zeroth secret facility was buzzing with frantic activity. Engineers rushed between glowing control panels, their claws clicking in panic. At the center of the chamber was the weapon, a massive sphere of energy contained by shifting rings of metal. It pulsed with a strange light, almost alive, and the air around it seemed to vibrate. High Chancellor Virik entered the room, his eyes fixed on the weapon. "How long?" he demanded. The chief engineer's voice trembled. "Minutes, maybe? Less. But Chancellor, we do not fully control it. If it destabilizes Virik, cut him off with a wave. Then it takes them with us." On the human side, Captain Ross's strike team was already inside the asteroid. They moved through dark corridors, hearing the distant roar of machinery and the thrum of the strange energy ahead. Every corner could hide a trap. Every shadow could be an enemy. One of her soldiers whispered, "You feel that? The airs?" Shaking, Alina didn't answer. She could feel it too. It was like standing too close to a storm that hadn't yet broken. They reached the main chamber and froze. The weapon loomed before them, larger than anything they had imagined. Zereth soldiers surrounded it, ready to die before letting the humans reach it. The battle that followed was chaos. Plasma fire lit the chamber, ricocheting off walls, cutting through armor. Humans and Zeroth clashed in brutal close combat, the sound of metal on metal mixing with the screams of the wounded. Alina fought like a force of nature, cutting through the enemy, driving her team closer to the weapon's control core. But then, a sudden shift, a low, growing hum that turned into a roar. The weapon's containment rings began to spin faster, the light inside blazing brighter, until it was almost blinding. The Zereth engineers screamed something in their language, and even the soldiers seemed to falter. Whatever this thing was, it was waking up. Admiral Hale's voice came through Elena's comms. "Ross report." She didn't have time to explain. "Weapon's going critical, sir. If we don't stop it now, none of us are getting out alive." Hale's reply was cold and final. "Then stop it, Captain, at any cost." Elena ran for the control console, dodging blasts, her fingers flying across alien controls. She barely understood. Behind her, her team held the line, buying her seconds with their lives. The weapon's energy screamed now, a sound that seemed to shake the bones. She found the core override a single glowing panel and slammed her palm against it, and then everything went white. The debris field floated like a graveyard in space. Fragments of ships, both alien and human, drifted silently, slowly turning in the weightless void. No radio signals, no distress beacons. Just the quiet hum of space swallowing everything. Captain Ross stood on the bridge of the Vanguard, eyes locked on the view ahead. This was all that remained of the Velar, the proud, arrogant species that had once sworn to humble humanity. Now their name was vanishing from history, and soon even the memory of them would be gone. But Ross knew something the others didn't. He had seen the last Valaria alive. He had heard their final words, words he could never repeat. The crew was tense. No one spoke above a whisper. They had been ordered into this sector to clean up and secure the region. But everyone understood the truth. They were here to erase any trace that the Valari had ever existed. The order had come from the highest level of the United Terran Council, and no one dared question it. Even the war historians were gone, their files wiped, their research burned. In the future, school children would never learn that the Valari had once challenged Earth. Humanity had not only won the war, they had destroyed the story. As the vanguard pushed deeper into the ruins, a faint signal appeared on the long-range scanners. It was weak, buried under static, almost like a ghost's whisper. "It's nothing," the communications officer muttered. But Ross's instinct screamed otherwise. "Boost it," he ordered. The crew hesitated. Boosting unknown signals was dangerous, but they obeyed. Slowly, the static cleared, and a voice emerged. Weak, trembling, but unmistakably alien. Human. "Listen, not the end." The bridge fell silent. The crew exchanged nervous looks. What? No Valari should be alive. No Valari could be alive. And yet this voice was speaking now, defying the truth they had been told. The signal coordinates appeared on the nav screen. A single object, an escape pod, floated between the wrecks, its hull scorched but intact. Without waiting for orders? From command, Ross steered the vanguard toward it. The crew didn't argue. Something deep inside all of them needed to know what this survivor had to say. As the docking clamps locked onto the pod, a deep unease settled over the ship. This wasn't just a rescue. This was opening a door that had been ordered shut forever. When the pod opened, the stench of burnt metal and alien blood filled the air. Inside, barely breathing, was a Valari soldier. Not a commander, not a leader, just a soldier. But his eyes burned with a strange light, not of defeat, but of warning. His voice was ragged, each word costing him pain. "Do you think you have one?" he rasped. "You think we are gone? But we were not the first." The crew leaned in, hanging on every syllable. "We were only the last to warn you." His chest shuddered, his hand gripping Ross's sleeve with surprising strength. "They are coming, not us. Worse." Before Ross could press for details, the Valari's body went limp. Dead. No heartbeat. The medical officer shook her head. Soldier's warning hung in the air like a shadow. Ross stood frozen. He knew that if he reported this to command, the council would bury it instantly, maybe even erase his own memory of it. Yet, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was the truth. The war with the Valari had been brutal, but maybe it had only been a distraction. Maybe humanity's greatest threat had not yet arrived. As the vanguard pulled away from the wreckage, the crew noticed something chilling. Beyond the debris field, far in the darkness, faint lights shimmered too. Far to identify, but moving in ways no human or Valari ship ever had. Ross stared at them for a long moment before turning away. He gave no order to scan them. No report was filed. Some truths, he thought, were too dangerous to share. But deep down, he knew. The real war hadn't even begun. And somewhere, across the stars, something else was already on its way.